this is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.
Welcome in, Tuesday edition, Clay Travis Buck Sexton show. I am down at our Jacksonville, Florida affiliate. We appreciate all of our affiliates. Always like to give them a shout out when we're in different studios. You can be listening to us at AM 600, FM 101.1 in the Jacksonville area. Buck, you were just here. That is WBOB. And we were talking about this yesterday, that Jack's Beach, one of the great under-discussed parts of the country. People listening to us in Jacksonville Beach area right now are either saying, shut up, guys, we love it here, you're going to drive up property costs, or they're saying, finally, people are noticing how great it is here.
Gotta be a top 5, maybe top 3 underrated beach community in the whole country, in my opinion.
It's pretty awesome.
Underrated.
And they used to be decent at football down here. So, for the Jacksonville Jaguar fans out there, I know. They had a good year. And honestly, it's not very far from the University of Florida, where Buck Sexton's wife is an alum. Unfortunately, they got whipped by Iowa in the NCAA tournament and are out. Did you even know that, Buck?
I did not, but it looks like I lost one on the bracket because I always bet on Florida. I'm always betting on Florida.
So the Gators are out. We will have some fun.
Who did you have to win the whole thing, by the way? I took Duke, Houston, just because I've heard the name so many times.
Houston is my pick. I think Duke's actually going to lose to St. John's this upcoming Sweet 16 game. But both of our teams are still alive. Houston's got a tough matchup as well. And we'll be taking a bunch of your calls. By the way, Steve Yates, good guest here, because a lot of people have been saying, what do I need to know about this Strait of Hormuz? It's in the news a lot. I understand a lot of you are having to learn a lot of geography here as the situation in Iran continues. We will discuss that with him. Plus, we just talked about this yesterday. Senator Marsha Blackburn is going to join us in the third hour. She was with President Trump in Memphis on his visit to that city where crime is plummeting. I also want to throw out the phone number here for people who live in Memphis in the wake of the president's visit. I'm curious, for all of you listening in Memphis, how much difference have you seen in Memphis since the president's surge happened? 800-282-2882. But I wanted to start with this. Linda in Arizona continues to dominate the news cycle. There are tons of stories about her. This morning, as we were getting ready to come on the program, the Washington Post wanted to interview us. I had produced, they want to interview Linda. So if she is listening right now, producer Greg is going to ask whether you want to be interviewed by the Washington Post. So for everybody out there who is calling, you never know when you might step in and become a major part of the national story. And Buck, I flew this morning, out of Nashville, 0 issues with the TSA there. Every time I go through the Nashville TSA, I meet listeners, I meet fans of the show. I love the Nashville airport, and I love the TSA there. I appreciate everybody working. I'm going to be flying out this evening out of Jacksonville because I'm speaking at an event down here and then headed back home. And what I saw was things seem to be moving and progressing well. It appears, Buck, that TSA agent presence has actually helped with a lot of call outs going on, a lot of sicknesses, a lot of people saying, hey, you know what? I've got to do another job. I've got to be able to make money. I've got childcare issues. I've got to make sure that I can pay my bills, which I totally understand, which is why this is so unfair. And I think that the TSA agents are in fact helping because wait times seem to be down, based on what I have seen this morning. In the wake of TSA agents being deployed to help then allow, as Linda argued, and I think is happening, TSA agents to be reallocated because otherwise they don't have to watch exits and entrances and all these different things at the airport. So we will see exactly how this plays out. But I did want to say, this is I think a super cool example of President Trump paying attention and the relationship that he has with his voters. Yesterday, I went on after we had this show, Buck. I went on with our friend Will Kane, and I said this on our radio show as well. I said, "Hey, President Trump, I bet Linda, grandmother of 5, mom of a couple of kids. I said she's a big fan. I bet she would appreciate an autographed copy of the Trump was right about everything hat. Within an hour of me saying that, President Trump's team had texted, and they have signed. If you go on Twitter, you can see it. We'll share it from Clay and Buck if we haven't already. Linda has a personally signed President Trump hat that he signed for her yesterday on Air Force One that he is sending to us that we will then route to Linda as a thank you for being a supporter and helping to come up with a great idea. I know there's a lot of stories out there. To me, Buck, as we just told the Washington Post, and, you know, we all know how talking to media that doesn't love us often goes, so I have no idea how that story will turn out. But I actually think, irrespective of what your opinion is of President Trump, the fact that he is able to see a good idea and act on it basically in the space of 72 hours is a warp speed response from government. I think Linda's idea was a good one. She put it out into the ecosystem. It did not exist before her call. And shortly thereafter, the president of the United States is acting on it. I don't know that there's any example of a president behaving this way where he listens to his voters and tries to respond and is willing to accept their good ideas that we have ever seen. I think it is a great story. And if I were advising the White House, I would lean in on it. We're going to take great ideas no matter where they come from. You can be a Nobel Prize winning economist, or you can be a grandma of five. Good ideas are good ideas. We're going to try to move on them when we see them. And I think it's an incredible testament to him.
Well, that's the way that government should function. It goes back to, Clay, what I was saying yesterday about how the simple genius of Trumpism is figure out the obvious thing to do to make it better and do that thing. And this, now, to be fair, this is not an obvious thing to make it better. This was, there was some artistry, there was some creative thinking in this one. But Trump is willing to do the thing that will work, or do the thing that is a break from what everybody else in consistent failure has been offering as the only alternative or the best option, or whatever it may be. So I'm very happy to see that this has been deployed. It is it's classic, isn't it? I'm traveling for one day and Clay and the audience decide to fix America in 24 hours. So well done. I knew the ship was in good hands. I knew with you at the con, things would go smoothly. And in this case, better than smoothly, it looks like may have really done an end run on the Democrats here. Clay, I still believe that if nothing else, it'll help the lines a bit, which is good, but it also just shows the Democrats are causing this.
Yes.
Because there's no way, if Republicans were causing, even if you're not paying attention to politics, if Republicans were causing the long TSA lines, now they're going to send ICE over instead of just having the TSA do their jobs and be funded. No, of course, this is Democrats. And it brings me back to, counterinsurgency theory. Democrats are waging a political insurgency in an election year. Insurgents just have to make things bad. They have to make things dysfunctional, miserable, dangerous, whatever. And then they say, see, they can't protect you. They can't make it better. The people in charge are bad. The people in charge are the ones that are failing you, even though it's the insurgents that are blowing up the village and making sure that no one can get food. But they say, see, they can't make things better for you. Put us in charge and things will be fine. That's what Democrats are doing. They're political insurgents. They're making you miserable at the airport. They're slowing down travel. They're creating frustration because there's not enough frustration out there for them to capitalize on from bad Trump policy or bad problem. You know, they want the Iran war to be this huge cleavage in the MAGA base. It's not. All the polling, are we taking irate calls about the Iran war? No, we're not. We're open to them. But people are saying, yeah, look, I trust Trump to play this out. I trust Trump to figure out the best way for the country to move forward on this. That seems like 80-90% of Trump voters right now, which is pretty solid. So this is why they have to make the TSA thing a point of misery, because otherwise, economy's good, border secure. Trump is you got to let him cook on Iran. He's doing his thing. What else are they going to point to?
I think that's the other part of this that's unfortunate. A lot of Democrats are trying, I've seen it, to say TSA failure is a function entirely of Trump and Republicans. And frankly, there's a lot of people who believe that because they are in such a sheltered media ecosystem that all they can think of is Orange Man bad. Buck, I had some fun with this. I posted this last night because I did think it was funny. The left wing out there is outraged by the idea that ICE agents wear masks. And their latest concern is, what if ICE agents wear masks at the airport? The funniest thing about this, as you well know, is the people who are wearing masks at the airport still, after 6 years, are concerned that the ICE agents might be wearing masks at the airport. It wasn't very long ago, and I'm still radicalized and angry about it, that they were all lecturing us. Remember when they would say, Buck, my mask protects you and your mask protects me, which is why flight attendants were monitoring how long you sipped from a drink or chewed your peanuts. I guess they don't have peanuts anymore because of all the peanut allergies, your pretzels on the airplane, and walking around and saying, excuse me, sir, excuse me, ma'am, you're keeping your mask down for too long. So if you truly believe that masks were important, shouldn't you be applauding the fact that the ICE agents were wearing their masks in the airport? Isn't wearing their masks keeping you safe? That is what they argued with us 6 years ago, and I'm still not going to forget it because they were such draconian, awful authoritarians for that entire process, and now many of them just want to pretend that it never happened.
It's also a perfect example of this tells you everything you need to know. If someone is currently walking through an airport anywhere in America wearing a cloth mask,
yep,
and they have an opinion of any kind on politics, and they maybe just don't know anything, and that's why they're wearing the mask. They could just be wildly ignorant of all things. That's possible. But if they have an opinion on, say, ICE, 100% chance that they are outraged about what happened in Minneapolis. Wearing a mask to protect you from germs, which does not work. It does not work. It never worked. It's very obvious. People, what about surgeons during? Yeah, because they're up close and they have saliva and stuff could fall into the wound. That's a different thing. But anyway, doesn't work, Clay, and yet 100% chance that they're very upset about Trump. There is not a single Republican in America right now walking around, not a single Trump voter in an airport with a mask on who's like, COVID is still real.
That's right. That's 100% true. And so I do think it's funny that these are the people that are claimed to be the most outraged and upset and terrified of the fact that ICE is acting as they are in airports, which, by the way, doesn't mean that everything's going to get better. It's just kind of a bandage to help with the disaster that Democrats have created. And if you're standing in a line, and I know that some of you are, as you listen to us, you're headed into airports. Honestly, if I were thinking about, Buck, traveling to Houston, New Orleans, New York City, Atlanta, based on some of the information that I have seen over the past few years, I wouldn't go. If I had a trip scheduled right now to land at IAH in Houston and I knew I was going to have to fly back out, I would not go. If I were headed to Atlanta, I wouldn't go. If I were headed to New York City, I wouldn't go. I'm not willing to stand in line for hours. There are very few trips that are so necessary to make that I would be willing to stand in line for hours to make them.
All very good points. We'll come into some of your calls and talkbacks here about all this. Maybe one of you listening wants to solve a massive problem in America, get the attention of the White House and get yourself a signed Trump hat. Just throwing it out there. It happened once. It could happen again. All right, now something serious we got to dive into, and that is how to defend yourself at home with non-lethal options. I got a lot of lethal options here. You guys know I'm a big 2A guy, but I also like to have force escalation possibility, meaning depending on what the situation calls for, I can go non-lethal. Carrie prefers non-lethal. That's just the way some people want to be able to defend themselves, and it makes perfect sense. This is where Saber comes in. The Saber home defense launcher delivers powerful impact pepper projectiles, 7 of them, which is 2 more than most of the competitors. Because when you're in your home and you're concerned, you hear that bump in the night, you want to have the gear you need to protect yourself. And this is where the Saber home defense launcher comes in. But Saber has a whole range of products too. Saber pepper sprays, pepper gels, stun guns. They give you compact, reliable protection wherever life takes you. When safety matters, America chooses Saber, the #1 brand trusted by police and millions worldwide. Don't wait for a close call. Get protection now at saberradio.com, S-A-B-R-E radio.com, sabreradio.com, or call 844-824-SAFE.
Saving America, one thought at a time. Clay Travis and Buck Sexton. Find them on the free iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Second hour of Clay and Buck kicks off now. Let's talk Strait of Hormuz, the conflict with Iran, and bring in our friend Steve Yates. He's a senior fellow at the Heritage Foundation, a former Bush national security official. And Steve, just take us through as you see it here. We know Hormuz is a choke point. Why is this so complicated? What do you think can be done about it? How do we resolve this thing? I saw an editorial in the Journal, Wall Street Journal, saying, we just got to land troops to secure the strait, and it's just going to be a quick operation. And I'm like, whoa, hold on a second. I've heard that before. What do you think about what's going on here?
Well, Buck, as you know, it's a very confined geography. That's one of the major challenges. It's a very long strip of waterway where Iran has shoreline all along one side. There are some very, very wealthy neighbors on the other side of that water that would like to get their energy out to market. And then it goes through this very narrow strait that is a choke point. There's an island in the middle of it that Trump has hit some military targets on and has talked about maybe taking control over, that is responsible for refining and has an extremely high proportion of Iran's oil endowment. So I think people who say this is a simple military operation might be underselling it a bit. They are so close to Iran geographically that even with remnants, you might still get hit. And I think that's why President Trump has done this maximum pressure, but then pull back and say, if we can get a deal that gets them to relent and we reopen things, then we're in a better place. And he also has pressured allies to say, we have a really small American percentage of this oil. You guys come in and shepherd your vessels out of here, and the Iranians shouldn't shoot at you. And so I think there's these at least two layers that really need to get handled before the curve is turned on this.
Steve, I think a lot of our listeners are just not very familiar with the Strait of Hormuz in general. Based on my reading, the vast majority of oil and gas that is coming through the Strait of Hormuz has no impact on the United States oil and gas marketplace at all. And I think much of it ends up going to China. With that in context, to what extent actually should this be a larger global issue? A lot of the focus has been on the United States oil and gas market, but really it's more of a global issue than it is a United States one.
Well, Clay, that's right. But first and foremost, oil is a fungible good, which is a fancy word of meaning it can shift in value and get sold and bought in any number of different ways. And so when oil goes out of this restricted area and goes to China, that affects global supply in the market and it affects prices. And so any release of resources out of this conflict zone will have downward pressure on price in some measure. It's definitely the case that China is the overwhelming buyer of Iran oil. It's partly because it's been sanctioned for a long time and they've gotten it at a discount. And President Trump is trying to remove that discount and get them to pay for a little bit of the security freight. India also depends on a good bit of this too, but it's definitely one of these global commons issues of where Europeans depend to some degree and Asian major powers depend in a large degree, and America's providing them a service that Trump aims to get them to pay a bill for.
Steve, how do you assess the Trump, speaking from the Trump perspective here, said we're going to hit the energy facilities, power plants, I believe, and energy facilities in Iran unless they open the strait. But then we heard there's some back channel negotiations, so he has put that red line, or he has moved that timeline down a bit. How do you think this is going? Is it possible to read into this? I mean, I know with Trump, I feel like part of the strategy is actually a little bit of the perception of chaos that the opposition can take from his statements. What do you think about what he's doing?
Well, Buck, from people who've been longtime practitioners, we think of this as somewhat straight statecraft. I think of it as Trumpcraft. He hits like a sledgehammer, and then he'll pull back and he'll look for where are their deals, and he recognizes just common sense that if we can get them to relent and engage in some kind of a verifiable deal, that is safer, more endurable, and it's a much preferable path to go down. At the same time, even though his critics will never recognize it, he's being reasonable. He's giving them off-ramps every step along this way so that if they miss this deadline, and I suspect they might miss this deadline, Trump will hit them hard. But he's tried to leave the civilian energy infrastructure intact so that post-conflict reconstruction is cheaper and better for the people of Iran if they can take their country. So he's trying to do them a solid. Hopefully they recognize it, but I would make no mistake about it. If this deadline passes very much further, Trump's going to hit them hard, and that is kind of a classical form of warfare. You take the energy out to end the war machine. That's how you get total surrender.
We're talking to Steve Yates. As we've been talking to you in the last, 10, 15 minutes, the story from the Wall Street Journal, U.S. has ordered 3,000 82nd Airborne soldiers to the Middle East. Trump has given Iran a Friday deadline. What do you think it would look like if there were to be a raid? And I say raid because I don't think we're going to be setting up bases in Iran that potentially could involve Karj Island or putting troops to try to protect the Strait of Hormuz. In a big picture sense, what might that look like? And obviously, Trump is at least threatening that he might do so with these actions.
Well, I do think the Karg Island option is very much front and center. I really don't like the option personally of the U.S. being kind of the sole provider of security in this. Really should be something that is a shared responsibility, especially among those Gulf allies who have been hit by Iran and now say they're going to hit back and they need to provide security for their flows to go to market. So I really hope the president is working behind the scenes to get them involved so that there's skin in the game in every sense, and it's not just American targets for Iranian forces to hit. But we would have to just knock the crap out of their coastline to have a safe buffer for ships, and we'd probably have to occupy Karg Island to control that.
Do we have a sense, and we're speaking to Stephen Yates, senior fellow at the Heritage Foundation, national security expert. Steve, do we have a sense of what the acceptable end game is here? Again, Trump has indicated numerous times of an end game or what maybe it looks like, depending on the day. But I think there's variations on a theme here. What do you think would be acceptable for this to get to at least a ceasefire and some next phase?
Right. Well, Buck, I think of it as getting to a de-escalation point that sort of pivots into longer term maintenance. And I think President Trump has been clear about some of the standards. One has been hyper-focused on the nuclear programs. That's combined U.S. and Israeli operations that might involve having to have some forces, hopefully not ours, but some forces going in to physically control and verify disarmament in those sensitive facilities, the launch capabilities, complete defanging of the security forces. I think that's also been more the Israeli mission in recent days. So I think it's overwhelmingly getting the flow of resources, not just because we love oil, although that's a good thing to love to keep the world running. It's to make it so that markets calm, resources flow, and there's a sense of where we can get post major military operations. I think that we should and must get there in the next week or two. And that's where we'll get a sense of, is this tipping into a more complex entanglement, or have we really hit all those targets that the Secretary of War and the President have said we have?
Trump has been talking about doing this since the 1980s. There have been people out there who have said, oh, he only did this because of Israel. Buck and I have talked about this. I'm curious how you would analyze the likelihood of this. I can see a world where the United States says, hey, we've done everything we want to do, and pulls back, and Israel continues to hit Iran. What do you think the likelihood of that is, that this union of attack eventually turns into a solitary attack from Israel?
Well, I 100% agree that it's going to change. I don't want it to be solitary in the sense that I really seriously hope that our regional partners play more of a role in constructively shaping the security and economic environment there after major military operations wind down. I believe completely the president has his set of clear objectives. He wants to make sure there's a return on the investment. But he's definitely, I think, going to be looking in the shorter term horizon, whereas Israel and maybe some other partners really need to do the constant gardening in the longer term. We can hit every once in a while when necessary. I think that's appropriate for the United States as a superpower, but we can't be the one that's micromanaging this, even in the months, much less years range going after this.
What does a realistic future of the Iranian state look like that would be clear evidence that the Trump plan here has worked? I mean, essentially, Steve, what is for victory for us is obviously Strait of Hormuz is open, oil is flowing. We have some kind of, as you said, a de-escalation agreement. Got to figure out what the Israelis are going to do in this as well. I figure there's going to be some the highest level talks between Trump and Netanyahu on this. But is there a world in which we decide we can live with the mullahs still kind of in charge, but they're just really wimpy and frightened mullahs? Or is it some kind of a pathway to a representative democracy, maybe overseen by some Arab League transition process? I mean, I'm basically asking you to fix the Middle East here, but we had a lady call in and fix the DHS problem with TSA. So, you've been doing this for like 30, 40 years, Steve. You tell me, how does the next phase of Iran look if this all goes according to plan?
Well, Buck, the first sign I'm looking for is an actual human being with a name that is the person or group that President Trump has been negotiating with, directly or indirectly. I think for their own life sake, they have kept this person anonymous. A lot of speculation, but really, if there's going to be a soft transition, it's going to have to be into the hands of some entity that's recognizable so that we and others in the international community can make deals that ensure the peace and get through this transition. So first, we're going to have to see who's the they when President Trump says they have made a commitment to denuclearize. That would be a major win if that's true, and I believe the president is hearing that. But complete, verifiable, irreversible dismantlement of that program is a 30-plus year-long objective. If President Trump did that in a month or two, that's borderline miraculous. And so getting that person identified, that group identified, and then international peacekeepers or verifiers, that's where we can go back to the allies and say, you guys have got to come up with a coalition that does this. You run into problems, we might be your 911, but we're not your daily daddy.
Last question, Steve Yates. There are reports that Saudi Arabia is encouraging Trump to keep pouring on the steel, so to speak, on Iran. UAE, Qatar, based on reports, kicking Iranian diplomats out of their country. Is the most under-discussed part of this entire attack how much support there is for it from so-called other Arab Muslim countries?
Well, Clay, that's ultimately been the biggest rebuttal to this idea that it was somehow Israel that on its own dragged us into this. For years, I have heard from Arab allies deep, deep concerns, and it was frankly welcomed by then when Trump 1.0 brought in the maximum pressure campaign to get away from the Obama-Iran nuclear deal. They were the key drivers that made the Abraham Accords a reality. It was, yes, the U.S. and Israel involved, and very much so, but it was Arab allies that pushed very, very hard in this. And this really ultimately gets back to Trump Craft 1.0. He's resetting all of these trouble zones with different cards and different coalitions. And I think those Arab allies are sick of what Iran has done to them during this conflict and really over the last decades.
Steve, outstanding stuff as always. Keep us updated. I know the audience is going to appreciate all this deep dive, and we will talk to you again soon.
Thanks so much.
Look, I got to tell you, Rapid Radio's Michigan company produces modern-day walkie-talkies. These are absolutely outstanding. You're going to love them. If you got young kids like I do, we don't have our youngest. He's 11. He doesn't get a cell phone, but we want to stay in touch with him. So sometimes when he's been out running around in the neighborhood, we give him a Rapid Radio, say, hey, if you're having any issues or you want to keep us updated, let us know where you are. And it is fantastic. If you are worried as we come into tornado season in so many different parts of the country about maybe your power being knocked out, trees falling on power lines, all of these different concerns, not too long until it's hurricane season again for those of you who live anywhere near the coast as we're coming into spring, and then summer will be here and it's hurricane season again. Rapid Radio's 5-day charge on one hookup. We talked about during the ice storm. We had listeners who said, hey, in Oxford, Mississippi, I got a kid at Ole Miss. Only way I could get in touch with her was through Rapid Radios. Get hooked up right now, and you will get $300 in free gear with your order, including a tactical radio bag, a USB charger, and an EMP Faraday bag. Plus, every order gets a 30-day money-back guarantee. What do you have to lose? Check it out today, rapidradios.com, code radio for 5% off and free shipping, plus that $300 in great added value. That's rapidradios.com. Rapid Radios, communication redefined.
Want to be in the know when you're on the go? The Team 47 Podcast. Trump highlights from the week. Sundays at noon Eastern in the Clay and Buck podcast feed. Find it on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back in. Clay, Travis, Buck Sexton Show. Hour number 3. About to be joined by Senator Marsha Blackburn. One bit of news being reported as we speak. This is according to Axios. The U.S. and a group of regional mediators are discussing the possibility of holding high-level peace talks with Iran as soon as Thursday, but are still waiting for an official response from Tehran. Two sources with knowledge of the discussion tell Axios. We will see what is going on airports. We got some updates for you from across the nation, but we bring in now Senator Marsha Blackburn of the great state of Tennessee. And I know yesterday, Senator Blackburn, you were with President Trump as he toured Memphis, including Graceland, and talked about the massive decline that we have seen in overall violent crime since there was a surge of federal support. You represent the state. You were just there. What should people know nationwide about what's happening in Memphis?
Memphis is the model, Clay. If you want to get crime down in your city, look at what Memphis has done and the partnership that is there with local, state, and federal elected officials and local, state, and federal agencies all working together, and it takes it all as a team. And when Kash Patel and Pam Bondi were coming through their confirmations for FBI and Attorney General, I asked each of them and then got a public commitment from them to help us. They jumped in. They worked with their agencies. Federal agencies worked with the local police. They worked with the Tennessee Highway Patrol and National Guard and Tennessee Bureau of Investigations, our U.S. Attorney, our U.S. Marshal, and 30 federal agencies on the ground working, helping. And because of that, in under 6 months, we have cut the crime rate in Memphis by half. And Memphis is on its way from being the most dangerous city per capita in the country to being one of the safest cities. That shows you when the people with a Democrat mayor, Democrat elected, Democrat police chief stand up and say, we are going to work with these resources, with these agencies, with all of these elected officials. We are going to do this for the good of the people. Then this is the type result that you get.
Hey, Senator Blackburn, it's Buck. This is such a remarkable story. We've seen similar numbers in D.C., and I know as the crime stats are compiled from cities where there's been this federal intervention to bring crime down, we're going to keep seeing this. But I think you laid into a critical point there. which is that this is a Democrat-controlled city still. They were willing to work with the federal government to bring the crime rate down. Is there any hope in your mind that we might see this then in some other Democrat-controlled cities? Because if you're the mayor, maybe you have aspirations to be a governor or a senator, perhaps, in a state. But there are a few things that I would believe could be a bigger benefit to any mayor than be able to look at his constituents when he wants or she wants to run for reelection and say, yeah, we brought the violent crime rate down 50%.
And that is something that is so vitally important. The people that came to the round table we did in Memphis yesterday had remarkable stories. And the people that were in the room, Buck, you would have loved listening to these people. They weren't partisan. They were citizens of the city of Memphis who have dealt with this crime issue. And for them to be able to talk about sitting on their porch, and drinking a glass of tea and not worrying about a bullet coming through the house. For them to talk about being a small business owner and not having landscaping equipment or delivery equipment stolen, or employees not being robbed when they were leaving work, and hear about children back to class. They're not skipping school. They are going back to school. They're not being recruited by gangs, because many of these gangs have been run out of the city of Memphis. Memphis has seen more than 9,000 arrests, 9,000 in the last 5 months. These are violent criminal arrests. And you have crime down significantly in every category. Motor vehicle thefts are down 65% in Memphis. And when you focus on an issue and say, we're going to surge, and then once we surge, we're going to look at those results and we're going to figure out how to sustain that good work. And we're going to do it all in partnership for the safety of the people of our city.
We're talking to Senator Marsha Blackburn. Right now, as we are speaking to you, Senator, Markwayne Mullin, one of your former, I guess I could say now, Senate colleagues, has been sworn in as the head of DHS. I believe yesterday he was confirmed by a vote of 54 to 45, including your support. What can you tell us about Markwayne Mullin? What do you think he will be like as DHS head?
He is a very good friend of mine. Markwayne is someone who is going to work diligently. He understands how you run a business, how you lead people. And, that is the most important thing in an organization, is knowing how to lead people and how to manage assets. And Markwayne gets that. He gets the difference in that. He is given to protecting our great nation. He knows and supports President Trump and his America First agenda. And it was exciting to be on the floor with him last night, to have his family here and to see their excitement as he was named our nation's Secretary of Homeland Security.
Speaking to Senator Marsha Blackburn right now, and, we are seeing these breaking reports from just today, Senator, about some of these airports that have been so snarled because of Democrats really manufacturing a travel crisis. That's what has been going on. But now this ICE deployment into these airports has substantially, if not completely, alleviated that TSA congestion. This is pretty remarkable. I have to ask you, Senator, do you know that there is some belief that this originated with a call in to the show on Friday, and Clay immediately then took it to Fox, and then the president ran with this? It looks like this strategy is working.
It is indeed working, and putting ICE over at the airports to man the exits as people walk out of the secured areas, and to prohibit people from running through the entrance into that exit or through that exit into the secured area, to check IDs, identifications, to assist TSA employees who are overworked right now. And we continue to work to try to find a way to get DHS fully funded. We have a group that has been working with the White House. It is a part of our appropriations committee, those members, and they are trying to find a way forward. And then we're also discussing doing a public safety reconciliation where we will look at bolstering the funds that are necessary to continue the public safety efforts for our nation.
We're talking to Senator Marsha Blackburn. You spend a lot of time in Washington, D.C. The overall violent crime rate has collapsed in Washington, D.C. You were just in Memphis. You just shared the data with us about how much the crime rate has collapsed in Memphis. Isn't it now the case that using both these cities as sort of experiments, for lack of a better way to describe it, that there are tons of cities out there that if we did the exact same thing, we could save a massive amount of lives? Shouldn't we just start to apply these lessons nationwide?
Oh, yes. And when you look at the difference in Memphis and Minneapolis, think about that one, where in Memphis, they embraced the help and welcomed the help. And then they moved forward with making the city secure. And as I said, now 9,000 arrests later. And I will also add, in addition to the hundreds of vehicles that have been recovered, the hundreds of weapons that have been taken off the street, they have found over 150 missing children that were being held by people, and they have been returned home. And as I said, you've got hundreds of children that have gone back to school. They're not joining the gangs. And other cities should be looking at this. And, you look at somewhere like Chicago or L.A. or San Francisco that has such horrific issues. You look at cities that are sanctuary cities for illegal immigration, and you say, why are they harboring these criminal illegal aliens? And then you look at Memphis, where citizens are walking up to you. You know, people call our office every single day, and they say, thank you so much for focusing on Memphis, for bringing peace to our city, for helping to get the crime down.
No doubt.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Senator, by the way, congrats on polling. I don't know if you comment on polling very much, but I saw that you have a 50-point lead in the upcoming governor's race, which will, frankly, largely be decided in August when the Republican primary happens. So congrats on how well that campaign is going.
Well, thank you. We are working hard and working to earn every vote, and grateful for those good polls that are coming our way.
No doubt. That is Senator Marsha Blackburn, soon to be the next governor of the great state of Tennessee, my governor. Look forward to that. And I want to tell you right now, if you are watching what is happening all around the world, there are continued attacks on Israel from Iran as they are firing weapons into Israel with no real regard for where those missiles are headed. And if you are paying attention to that at all, you probably have also been noticing that constantly Israeli citizens have to be running into bomb shelters. And one of the groups that's helping to create bomb shelters, International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. They're putting more bomb shelters. If you're driving on the road in Israel, every now and then there's just a bomb shelter on the side of the road. So if you get a missile alert, you can pull off on the side of the road, go there. If you are receiving treatment inside of hospitals, they have had to relocate some of the hospitals underground into the parking garages. If you're wondering who helps to make that happen, it's the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews, and they are doing things to try to protect people in the Holy Land everywhere. Your generous gift can show that you stand with the people of Israel and want to make sure that they are protected in a time of war. To rush your gift, you can call 888-488-IFCJ. That's 888-488-IFCJ. You can also give online at ifcj.org. That's ifcj.org.
Clay Travis and Buck Sexton. Mic drops that never sounded so good. Find them on the free iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back in, Clay Travis, Buck Sexton Show. Buck, I saw this news story come out. We've been talking about TSA and ICE obviously being deployed to 13 different airports, thanks to Linda in Arizona, who has a hat signed by President Trump on her way. I wanted to hit a couple of things here that I saw this morning as I was headed into work. And today I headed into work on Southwest Airlines, flying down to Jacksonville. Super smooth, thanks to the Southwest crew, and also thanks to Nashville's TSA. No line at all there when I came through this morning, and the guys and gals there were doing great work, even though they're working without pay. But this story, Atlanta, I don't know if you saw this yet, Buck. Delta Airlines announced this week it suspended its standalone service for members of Congress until the TSA is fully funded. I love this. Great move, Delta. Quote, due to the impact on resources from the long-standing government shutdown, Delta will temporarily suspend specialty services to members of Congress flying Delta. Next to safety, Delta's number one priority is taking care of our people and customers, which has become increasingly difficult in the current environment. A spokesman for Delta, this is from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, said House and Senate members will now be treated like all flying passengers based on their Sky Miles status. In other words, just like you and me. First of all, I don't know what you think about this, Buck. I don't think House and Senate members should get special status. Now, if you fly all the time and you're a medallion member or a frequent flyer, whatever the phrase is that these different airlines use, fine, because you're spending a lot of money and they want to treat you better because you're a valued customer. All those things can make sense. But there are 535 members of the House and Senate. How many people do you think are regularly recognized and harassed? And again, you're inside of an airport, so we know there's not people with guns or knives or anything that would make it violent there. I don't know that they should ever return this privilege. And certainly when TSA's not getting paid, I like taking it away. But I don't know that these guys really deserve special privilege anyway. Like, why can't an average member of Congress or the Senate stand in line like everybody else? What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think it's a weird, almost like a celebrity, fringe benefit that is not, there's no reason. Am I all in favor of calling out United States military to the front of the line and let them board? Absolutely. For serving in the military. Congress, yeah, some of them serve themselves. Mostly, actually, they serve themselves. I'm not about to say that they can't be like the rest of us. In fact, I think the more that members of Congress have to act like normal people, the better for all of us. I'm all in favor. For example, hit the roof, as so many people did, when Congress exempted themselves from Obamacare. Remember that?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Oh, we're going to force this on all of you. But, we're going to have our gold-plated awesome plans. But you can have the crap plans.
I would just continue to say this, and I think it would end lockdowns and shutdowns and everything else once and for all. If Congress can't get a budget passed, then Congress shouldn't get paid. Period. For the whole year. Like, if you can't, your job is to get budgets passed. We keep having all these lockdowns, all these shutdowns, and people who are normal, hardworking employees are losing their ability to get paid. So to me, if you're in Congress and you can't get a budget passed, you shouldn't get paid. And I think it would immediately go away, Buck. I think if House and Senate members had to deal with the same things that they're putting other people through, I think they would get paid. And look, I think there are House and Senate members that do not have a lot of money, right? And those people should be driving this, because if you're having to live on your salary and pay your mortgage and pay for your kids' daycare or whatever else, then you should understand better than the average super millionaire who is being funded by George Soros probably and isn't having to live on what they actually make. It's easier, I think, for those people to say, hey, we're just going to shut down the government. What do we care? I think if you started saying Congress doesn't get paid for the year that they shut down, I think this would end once and for all. And I don't think it's good. Our friend Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin has laid out in the Wall Street Journal, and we've had him on talking about this, a super logical process for the budget that requires everything to get done. I was just reading his piece. He had a good piece about the filibuster over the weekend. And he said, look, I mean, it's 49 out of 50 states, I think, have a balanced budget requirement. So state governments tend to balance their budgets. Go figure. The federal government doesn't. And I think incompetence should not be rewarded. And so when I saw this story from Delta Airlines, I said, good for Delta, because remember, all the CEOs of the airlines came out and said, fund TSA, get this taken care of. We want this done. I just think it's a no-brainer. I don't know that I would return this service if I were Delta, candidly.
No,
and so, I think that makes sense to you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad the airlines are fighting back a little bit here, but this is nonsense. Because as you all know, the airline employees are taking a lot of the brunt of this. You think people are going to be in a good mood when they walk up to the ticket counter or whatever, or they get on a plane and deal with the attendants and the pilot crew? You think people are going to be nice and in a good mood after waiting 4 hours in a TSA line? I mean, I'd be steaming mad. Try to be polite to the people who had nothing to do with it, but I think any person would have really had more than their fill, and the frustration would be boiling over. So this is absolutely the right move for them to do. And it's also it's just so classic. The Democrats are doing this, and it's all based in the lie. The lie is that somehow this is Republicans creating these lines because they won't just bend the knee and let Democrats have control over immigration enforcement.
Yes.
That's not the way that this works. They don't have the executive branch. The executive branch should not be bending the knee when Democrats are in the minority to how laws are enforced by federal agencies, because Democrats get sad about the enforcement of federal law. Sorry. So they're willing to just make people miserable and unhappy and then lie about who did it. To me, this just shows you what really an unethical and pretty depraved party the Democrats have become. This is the best they can do. Because if they were admitting to everybody, yeah, guys, we're the reason. We're so dedicated to illegal aliens that we think we want to keep so many illegal aliens in this country that we don't even want the child predators and the gang members and the murderers to be deported. We want to keep them all. We want to keep all those illegals. So you're waiting in line because Democrats don't want any of those illegals, even the worst of the worst illegals, sent back to the countries that are actually the countries that they belong in. If they were willing to do that, Clay, I would say, all right, but they're not. Right? They're playing a game here, and the game is, we're willing to open up the TSA if only Republicans would play ball with us. It's like, well, what are you talking about? What are you really standing for?
By the way, President Trump is speaking right now. We'll play some of this audio, but I'll read this quote. This is from the Rapid Response 47 account on Iran. We're in negotiations right now. I can tell you they'd like to make a deal. Who wouldn't if you were there? Look, their Navy's gone, their Air Force is gone, their communications are gone. Pretty much everything they have is gone. That is President Trump speaking at the Mark Wayne Mullen swearing in. He says there's a change in the leadership. Iran's leaders are all different than the ones who started. And then there are additional quotes coming out. So we will keep running on this. President Trump speaking as we are talking with all of you in the Oval Office right now. Says Rubio and Vance are involved in negotiations with Iran, in addition to Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff. Okay. We will update you on that. In the meantime, if you are trying to preserve your overall memories in your household, if you have potentially had difficulty with trying to keep track of all the old VHS tapes or all the old camera film reels, all the old pictures, that's what Legacy Box is designed to help with. They will get you hooked up with a great deal and make sure that you have a wonderful setup when it comes to preserving your family's memories, so that they're not just stored in the attic or not just stored in the garage, not falling victim to potentially weather-related conditions, floods, too much heat. These VHS tapes, they were not designed to last forever. And right now, Legacy Box has a great sale. 65% off their regular price, $9 per VHS tape. Plus, 90 days of free Legacy Box cloud access. They will store all of this on their own cloud for you so you can be sharing with all your friends and family. Don't wait until it's too late. Visit legacybox.com/clay to shop their $9 per tape sale and claim your cloud access. That's legacybox.com/clay. One more time, legacybox.com/clay.
Keep up with the biggest political comeback in world history on the Team 47 podcast. Clay and Buck highlight Trump replays from the week. Sundays at noon Eastern. Find it on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.